And so we're going to check out.
I'm sorry, what was the first one?
Endocrine. Oh, a hole in your heart. It's called a PFO.
A hole?
A hole, a little tiny hole in between the valves and the chambers of your heart.
Okay.
And then the other one is endocrine problems, and with your adrenals and your kidneys and things like that. So, so we checked for the hole and didn't find it, and assured me that I'd be fine to go to Disneyland. I went, and my general practitioner called me on my drive down, and she says, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm on my way to Disneyland." She says, "Well, I need you to pull over and find an ER right away." And I said, "Well, I'm not going to do that because I've been to the ER twice, and I know how they're going to treat me, and I know what it's going to look like if I go to a different town to an ER. I'm a nurse. I know the talk. I know what, what people think if you go ER shopping. And I'm just going to go to Disneyland and be with my kids." And she said, "Well, your cortisol is 0. You have no cortisol in your body." And I don't know if you know what cortisol is, but it's a hormone that your body puts out when there's inflammation in the body. Yes, when it's under stress, when there's inflammation, it sends out cortisol. So you always have some level of cortisol in your body. The highest is in the morning, and then it depletes through the day as you use it. And then if you're under acute stress or chronic stress, your body will produce more. Well, at this point, my body was not producing anymore because I had used it all up. Completely exhausted my adrenals over a long period of time of chronic inflammation in my body, which I didn't know about at the time. So she says, "You need to pull over and find an ER and get IV cortisol now." And I, 1, being stubborn, and 2, not realizing how critical it was, I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm going to go to Disneyland and enjoy my kids. And if I'm going to die, I'm going to die having fun and not in an ER bed." Because that's literally just the day before I was positive I wasn't getting out of that ER, and I didn't want to go out that way. So she said, "Okay, if you're not going to go in, then I'm going to call you in an oral cortisone, and as soon as you get back in town, you need to get into the ER." So we did that. Didn't go, it wasn't pretty. It was really ugly. Almost didn't make it back from California. I did, and got back into town, had some more lab work drawn that a specialist had ordered after he saw my lab work, had me do an adrenal scan and a few more labs to show that I really wasn't producing cortisol. And also the ACTH, which is the balancing hormone. ACTH and cortisol balance each other. So had all those drawn, and they were all 0. They were all nil. My body was completely depleted. I was literally lifeless other than my sheer determination to live. I had to lay completely flat in my bed. If I tried to sit up, I would lose consciousness. If I tried to raise my arms, they would just go numb and fall to the side. If I bent my legs would go numb and fall to the bed. I couldn't stand. So my husband took me back to the ER at this point, and they didn't believe I was in cortisol crisis, I guess, even with having all the information there. He said, if this were real, you wouldn't be alive. They tried to send me home. They tried not to treat me, tried to send me home. I asked for a second opinion. The second opinion tried to send me home. When I finally told them to explain to me how my lab work could show nil with no cortisol and no ACTH and diminutive adrenals. My adrenals are completely shrunken. Finally, that doctor was like, fine, we'll admit you overnight and do one more test. And when that test comes back normal, we'll send you home. And my husband was angry. He's like, what do you mean? You're not giving her cortisol now? And I'm like, it's okay. As long as they're doing something, I can hold on one more day. I've held on this long. I can do it one more day just to prove to them if I need to. So they kept me and did the test and showed that I, in fact, wasn't producing any cortisol. I did need cortisol. Gave me the cortisol, and I was great. I'm like, oh, hey, this is the answer. I'm going to be fine. They sent me home after 3 days of being in the hospital. They're like, okay, you're going to be on this 3 days, 3 times a day for the rest of your life. I'm like, great. I'm fine with that. I had my answer, I thought. Sent me home, and within 24 hours, I was back in the ER having seizures. Put me on new steroids, which didn't do any better. Still gave me, shut my whole body system down, my whole functioning. Yeah. Okay. My whole body system shut down. I was stuck it was a 24-hour acting med, so I was stuck in bed for 24 hours. I couldn't eat, I couldn't drink, I couldn't urinate, I couldn't move, I couldn't talk. All I could do was try and breathe and make it through. I knew it was a 24-hour acting med, so I'm like, okay, I just have to get through these 24 hours so it wears off. So from there, that was March last year. So from there went the battle of more specialists, flying across country to Mayo Clinic, more specialists, being diagnosed with all kinds of rare diseases nobody had ever heard of. Finally went to an allergist here locally after they diagnosed me with mast cell disease or mastocytosis. And he ran all the tests on me, and nothing came back except mold allergy. And he looked at me sideways because I was having anaphylaxis to everything at that time. I couldn't eat anything. I couldn't be around any scents. I couldn't be around light. I couldn't be around anything where my whole body would shut down. Like I'd go into a seizure or anaphylaxis, or I can't even describe all the horrors I went through. But mold was the only thing that came back, and he looks at me kind of sideways and he's like, I don't see this except for people that live out east, because I'm in the west where it's hot and it's dry and it's sunny and there's no humidity. And he said, do you have mold in your house? I said, no, I don't, but I worked in a building with mold for 17 years. And he said, well, that would do it. And they put me on histamine blockers, H1 and H2 blockers, and that helped. I mean, it helped me not to be completely unfunctioning, and I was able to tolerate little bits of light and little bits of food and little bits of things here and there. I wasn't completely confined to my bedroom, so I was happy at that point, because by then I thought I was, just going to be a recluse. And anyway, so started researching more about histamines and what causes them because, I had to be, I could function to a degree with these histamine blockers, and also they had me on beta blockers as well. But if they were off the second, that allowed you to do research? Yeah, that allowed me to function to the capacity where I could actually get online and research. Before that, I didn't have any kind of attention span or memory capacity or anything. And as soon as it wore off, it was a ton of bricks. All the symptoms came back tenfold. It wasn't like they would slowly come on. It was debilitating. I would be lethargic, literally incoherent, until somebody, if I couldn't get to my meds in time, somebody would have to feed them to me until they kicked in again. So thankfully I had a doctor that put me on a compounded extended release version, which doesn't exist, but they can make it if you find a compounding pharmacy. So that helped to where I could, function a little bit better even. But, I'm greedy. I'm young. I don't want to be a slave to semi-functioning on meds. So I started doing research more and more about what causes this histamine release, what causes all these symptoms I'm having, which any symptom you can imagine, literally name one, and I had it. It was, I don't know, it's ridiculous. But right at this minute, I can't even tell you how I came across it. But being on Facebook boards, basically, and reading people's stories and following one lead after another, and certain people would reach out to me if they saw what I had said and say, hey, maybe you want to look into this or look into that or try this. And I would search out every lead until, it didn't get me anywhere. But came across parasites again, and, I started looking into it more and I'm kicking myself now because I had such a turnaround in 2011 when I, did a parasite cleanse. But this time the symptoms were so completely different and opposite that I didn't really think of it, and my photophobia this time was more like burning and stinging, and I would even blister at times, not usually, but more like burning and stinging and tingling, and then would come on the neurological symptoms, where back in 2011 my photophobia would instantly just shut me down to lethargic, So I don't know. I have no excuse for why I didn't think of parasites sooner after having gone through something in 2011. But when it came up again and I researched it and decided to try it again, I again didn't have faith in it. I'm like, I've been down this road by now. It's been 10 months that I've been out of work. I've been housebound pretty much. If I do go out, I did have to have somebody with me, because who knows at what point I would become non-functioning. So I looked into it again, did another parasite cleanse. This time I did a different one called Scram. Anyway, within a few weeks, I had a complete turnaround again. And I wouldn't even say a few weeks. Within a few days, I noticed a difference. And within a few weeks, I was off of my medications that were my lifeline. Those medications I was on for the last 8-9 months around the clock that I assumed I would be on for life. And I was happy at that. I was just glad that something was helping me function. But within 2 weeks, I was weaned off of all those medications that were keeping me functioning to some degree.